Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.2.2, in which I am attempting to make Kerbals a multiplanetary species. As you may recall, I have been attempting to build what I'm calling the Minmus Shipyards, and we are building that on the flats here on Minmus. So what I am doing now is sending over a couple of our Kerbals, Valentina and Garina Kerman, who are going to be kind of the well, it's the pilot and the technician that is going to be there to actually do the assembly and also to survey the grounds to make sure that everything that I think should be there is there. And these are all flashing thanks to the indicator lights mod, which is interesting. Cool. Looks like we got some additional science from the flats. I guess I'd never actually sent a Kerbal here. Sure. Okay. Well, that's fine. We will collect some science, and I'll try to figure out what I can do with that at a later time, because I don't actually have any plans on sending anybody home, so we're going to have to make some kind of special extra trip. And actually looks like there's a bunch of science in this lander already, so this may not be the first time that I've done this. In any case, the real reason I'm here is to check on the surface scanning module. So let's see. We have minerals, rare metals, silicates, substrate, and rare metals. Again, wait. There's a lot of things duplicated on here. That's weird. Well, anyways, silicates and rare metals are the two things that I need in abundance at this base. So those are the things that I'll be drilling up locally to complement the rest of our production chain. So that should do it for that. Now the only thing left is to, well, I suppose actually get the additional modules down here. I have 3 large set of base modules that are going to be coming down, and I'll kind of walk through those really quickly. Then there's a 4th piece that may have to wait a little bit longer than that. Alright, so let's just get straight into it. I showed the launch of each of these and kind of pointed out how these things are constructed and that they have very similar lander setups, so I don't feel like it's entirely necessary to show a huge amount of detail on each of these, but I wanted to show the dicier parts of each one of these landings. So this one is, I want to say this is L2, which was the one that had the very little fuel, because as you can see over here there in the left-hand Kerbal Engineer, I only have about 281 meters per second of delta V left, but you'll also notice that I'm only going 75 meters per second down towards the surface. So I thought for sure that this one was going to be an incredibly dicey sort of landing. I thought that we were going to be very tight on our fuel budget. I thought it was going to have to like do some trickery with like sending up the fuel tanker and refueling it and doing all this other stuff, but between the high efficiency of the Honey Badger VTOL engines and the inclusion of a rather large amount of monopropellant, I'm able to kind of get around with this thing pretty dang easy. So now we're just getting close to our lander so that we don't have to send our Kerbals you know, EVAing far across the surface. One of the big benefits, and kind of one of the main reasons that you do build bases on Minmus, and this is probably going to be my biggest base. I intend for this one to be pretty significant as far as scope. But we're landing on the flats, which are flat. 0.0 degrees slope. So that makes this just amazing for landing whatever unwieldy thing that you have coming down. So I'm able to use my RCS to very easily target the Minmus hopper, and then, whoa, coming down a little bit fast. Okay, and touchdown with a little bit of lateral velocity, but that is just fine. And rock back down onto the cradle. Very, very nice. Excellent. So that's our first landing done. So this one, let's see, let's just save the game real quick, and then we can take a look at these modules. I've got the Kerbitat, 3.75 meter Kerbitat, which we're going to use as a purifier. It's going to purify water into recycling, basically. Then we have our first industrial refinery, which is going to make our basic reactions, chemicals, polymers, that sort of thing. And then our colonization module, which is going to turn colony supplies directly into increased living space. Because one of the things that I found when I was moving some of my Kerbals around to bring them out to this site, I tried to bring Jeslyn out here, but she was not actually in any mood for doing that. As soon as she got away from the main base, her habitation timer went down to 0 and she turned into a tourist, which was not great. So I'm not sure if that's a bug or what, but being able to actually create or use colony supplies in the colonization module, I think allows you to directly reset those timers. So this is our second module, which is actually L3. I want to make sure to do this completely out of order and confusing for everybody. But this one is our PDU and the other 2.5 meter modules, and the key thing to this one is it's way unbalanced. So we are taking it kind of slow, kind of easy as I try to scrub off a little bit of this horizontal velocity and bring us down towards our target. Alright, so we are moving on down. We still have a good 700 meters per second of delta V, so there's no real issue as far as fuel is concerned. It's just a matter of making sure that my impatience does not cause me to smash this thing directly into the ground. But this is, oh dear. Oh dear, I'm going to have to be very careful as I bring this in, because this thing has the same sort of RCS that the other ones do, using the Honey Badger control modules. However, the fact that the thrust is not particularly well aligned makes this very difficult to land properly. So I'm going to need to be a little bit more careful about killing off my horizontal velocity, getting myself rotated into the position that I need to be, and then dropping straight down. And so instead of doing any of those things, I did this. We're kind of coming in at a bit of an angle, and I'm only just now realizing that I need to rotate the vessel, and now I'm trying to do all the different things at once. I'm trying to kill off horizontal velocity, make sure I don't smash into the ground, maintaining my vertical velocity, and also rotating at the same time. And so I'm only able to do maybe 1.5 of those things at a time. So I managed to kick myself back up into the air, but now we're headed away. So, and then I finally rotate, but we are beginning to descend. So slowly we push with our monopropellant to try to get ourselves back into the correct position. Alright, bit more sliding around, and we are now getting pretty darn close. My rotation's a little bit off. I want these to be pretty close together. I'm not super worried about their exact position right now, because my intention is to bring down the Hulk constructor lander. I'm going to have to figure out how to flip it. I've done it once, so I can do that again. And boink. Almost touchdown. But I've flipped that over once, so I can do that again, and then I will plan on bringing that down here to assist with the construction, because I would like to strip off all these extra lander bits. Bink. And touchdown. And let's lower these lander legs, which I have preset to a decent position. But I'm going to bring down the constructor lander and use an engineer to try to finish this construction and get this stuff into, you know, not just a row of sausages. That would be nice. I think it looks kind of silly the way that they are, where they're just like three big rows of heavy modules, 3.75 meter tubes. I'd like something a little bit more interesting than that, so we'll see what I can manage to come up with when I get all this together. All right, and number 3, the final, which is actually the second, or L2, of the 3 base modules that I have sending over here to Minmus. And this one comes down a lot easier than the other ones, or maybe just maybe I'm actually learning. But this thing is coming down pretty nicely. If you look at the nav ball, you'll see that I'm pretty well tracking to pushing this directly down on top of the other vessels. The way that I kind of set up this landing was also trying to keep in mind how I wanted this, the actual touchdown to go. And I think I kind of know this one had more fuel than any of the other ones. I came into Minmus's sphere of influence with something like 1,300 meters per second of delta V. And so I just set up the entry burn simultaneous. Like, I didn't circularize or anything. I just came straight down onto this. And so we're coming down from a very high altitude, which makes it a lot easier to more precisely target your end position rather than the more fuel efficient way of killing your horizontal velocity very close to the ground so you do not incur gravity losses. On Minmus, that's really not a big deal. And that allows me to touch it down very nicely in the gap in between the two of these modules, and I'm even kind of showboating a little bit by getting them vertically lined up as well as horizontally. And touchdown. Bonk. Oh, slide it forward a little bit. There we go. All right, so these are all the big assembly plants, industrial refineries, the Kerbitat, the Academy, all the other huge heavy modules that can't, that need to be flown individually. Looks very good, and we're gonna strip all the extra stuff off and like pop those things and disintegrate them into material kits as soon as the colony box gets down. But that is actually still going to be in orbit, and by the time it gets out here, it is actually going to be coming around to the nighttime side of Minmus. Night is falling, so I will have to wait on that until the next turn around. And in the meantime, let's see if we can't make a little bit of money, because we are running very dangerously low. All right, and now for a little break from construction, or a pre-break from construction, I suppose, because I know that the assembly of the Minmus Shipyards from all the components is going to be a endeavor of hours. But that's all right. That'll be a lot of fun to get that built. So what we have here, as you can see from orbit, is some gigundous drills on the side of this thing. So we are sending out a pair of industrial-sized automated exotics drillers out to a place on Minmus where I am going to be drilling up some exotics. The idea here is we are going to get in the business of selling rare minerals back on Kerbin. So I have coming up a couple of launches right in a row that will facilitate the frequent transfer of exotics from this drilling rig that I'm going to be planting on Minmus up to a disposable or recoverable, I suppose, cargo container, and there's going to be a big nuclear tug that I use to transport things in between. So this is just step one to that whole process. Okay, there's really no getting around the fact that this thing is incredibly goofy looking. But there you have it. So this is the Nuclear Tug, as I promised, being sent up on a 5-meter booster. And then obviously there's no second stage, it's just the big Nuclear Tug. So the only other major difference between this and most of the launches is that this is actually intended to be used as a stage recovery propulsive landing. So I have tucked away in here, oh, it's got a little wobble that we're gonna, let's just fix that with some auto struts, very nice. So tucked away underneath that reaction wheel, the surface mountable one, is a probe core and some batteries that is going to take this booster stage back down to the ground. And the idea is that we are going to leave it on a suborbital trajectory with enough fuel for it to flip around, boost back, and then land propulsively. So we are going to leave stage recovery to actually deal with that. I know there are mods that exist that allow you to do that manually, but that's not my bag necessarily. I do enjoy money, however, so we are going to be using stage recovery to deal with that. Alright, so now we've got this thing up in orbit, just about. We've got 310 meters per second of delta V left on our booster stage, which should be, I believe, plenty for it to... it's just, where is the probe? It's fine. Just want to make sure I'm controlling this from the right place before we separate off this first stage, but it should have plenty of fuel. Oh, 711 meters per second of delta V. Yeah, that should be more than plenty for it to arrest its velocity, flip around, and land. And this is our Nuclear Tug. So this uses a just a probe core tucked away in a 2.5 meter service bay. Nuclear reactor, which I'm mostly using. Let's get the radiators on too. But that's mostly just there to cool the that enormous globe of pure liquid hydrogen, which is powering that enormous 2.5 meter nuclear engine. Yeah, I don't think I need to do anything with that one, so that should be fine. But yeah, this is enough to give this ship 8,200 meters per second of delta V, which is just phenomenal. And I've done some testing with some heavy weights on the end, and it should be able to push even a fully loaded cargo module back and forth between Minmus about 3 times before needing refueling. Round trip. Alright, and so the final thing, if we have a tug that is going to push cargo modules around, I suppose next we need the cargo module. So this is something that I have built with the intention of, once again, frequent reuse and recovery of the vast majority of the individual pieces. So that bottom bit is designed to actually break off, deorbit itself, and then be recovered once again. Looks like, yep, we did get some funds back from propulsive recovery. And then it just has a big container, 2.5 meter. It has a heat shield. It has RCS, probe control, all the things that it should theoretically need to be able to re-enter. And I have tested it once to make sure that that actually works. And hopefully that actually holds after the little bit of tweaking I did afterwards. But we are just now coming into dock, and the on top of the container bit is the lander bit, which is designed to be able to propulsively land this module down on the exotics driller and then launch again and rendezvous with the Nuclear Tug in orbit of Minmus. So this was a complicated piece of engineering. I spent a good couple of hours working on this, trying to get something rigged together that should work reusably, basically. Like, you could put together a single-use drilling rig and then a container that you just kind of hurl back at Kerbal, whatever, but this is intended to be a long-term cargo system. All right, so with all of that said, it is time to start planning our landing. So you'll see that I have a target here. This is where I have identified the existence of a good deposit of exotic minerals. So I imagine that's going to include things like rare elements, that sort of thing. I'm not sure exactly what rare elements that you could get on Minmus that you wouldn't be able to find on Kerbal, but I imagine that there are important spaceship grade level materials that you can find here in great abundance that you can't find back on Kerbal. Lithium, titanium, I don't know, other rare isotopes, that sort of thing that you could use in the manufacture of spaceship components that are harder to find on Kerbal, but you can find out here. So let's say that. Alright, so we are just adjusting our trajectory a little bit. I don't necessarily need to land directly on that target, but in the vicinity, in the biome is good. So I've dropped our liquid hydrogen fueled cryogenic stage, and we are now using our disposable upper stage that has 4 thuds on it that we will be using to both land and take off from Minmus with our full load of cargo. So now let's just bring ourselves down a little bit closer. I am not a huge fan of the way that this terrain looks. It looks like it's all kind of sloping, so I may need to do a bit of casting about, Neil Armstrong style, trying to find a good landing site that isn't, you know, strewn with boulders or on a 9-degree, 10-degree slope, that sort of thing. So let's see what we have below us here. I am actually just moving overhead and just taking a look around here, and it's all very slopey. That's a technical term, slopey. So let's just bring ourselves down a little bit so I can take a better look at the terrain. Alright, so luckily this thing has a pretty decent amount of fuel. Get those landing legs down. And this thing doesn't have to get back up into the... this thing actually doesn't have to go anywhere. I don't know why I was saying that this is a land and return stage. This thing is just coming down. I'm thinking of the container module, the commodity return module that I'll be using. This one just needs to find a good spot. Alright, several minutes of casting about on the surface for a decent spot later, I have found 5.8 degree slope, which is honestly better than anything else I was finding in this biome. And touchdown. There we go, nice and easy. So that is fantastic. And we're rocking a little bit, but that's probably fine. It'll all settle out. Let's deploy these drills. Oh. Did I do it again? Oh my god. So, this is not the first time I've even made this mistake, like on this series, let alone doing this sort of thing. Oh, goodness. Okay. I'll be right back. Alright, so nobody here notices, I'm sure, that there are suddenly the engines are not activated, and the thing is open, and there's a second container at the bottom of this ship. That's how it always has been. Yeah, that's the ticket. I definitely didn't go in and edit my save because I really did not feel like launching this thing again. Okay, that's exactly what I did, but I take no responsibility for my actions. This is a silly thing that I've done before, like I said. There was another vessel very much like this one that I launched that had the exact same issue, and that drove me crazy trying to get that one figured out. So I decided I was just going to end up relaunching this one, so we're just going to skip the cost and skip the time that it would take by just editing this one extra tank in here. So, whatever. This is not a complete purist playthrough or anything like that. We are just kind of proving out principles here. But wow! Look at how fast that is filling up with exotic minerals. I'm getting more than 3 per second. That is like 2 orders of magnitude higher than I expected. That's amazing! It also kind of invalidates my entire set of design principles on this. I had thought that I was going to be launching one of these things, you know, every couple of days, or, you know, it would just be kind of slowly filling up for the days that one container was transferring back. But I can just fill this up in an hour. Wow, that's crazy. All right, well, let's discard this stage, and then we will at least get our first container down. All All right, so this is our suddenly woefully inadequate seeming 2.5 meter container, disposable container module that we will be bringing in to land on our exotic driller, grab up the materials, and then bring it back. The exciting thing is based on what I was testing in the VAB, if I get 100% of the funds back in recovery, so I am going to have to be very careful about how I make this return, but if I get 100% of it, I'm looking at 1 million funds for the return of this vessel, which is super exciting. The exotics are worth a pretty significant amount of cash. On top of the return of the hardware components and all that. So if I'm able to actually return or fill up this container in a matter of an hour, I could probably use like a 3.75 or even a 5 meter container, fill that one up in just slightly more time than that, and then suddenly all of my money problems are gone in a humongous hurry. I'm going to have to think about how to make an efficient vessel that can do that run, that can come in here, land, fill up with the ore, and then transfer back, because I find that this particular... Ooh, we're coming in hot. Okay. Wow. Because I'm finding that this particular vessel that I have here is already pretty big, already pretty unwieldy, already it is pretty difficult to make this rendezvous and docking without, you know, smashing into anything or running out of fuel. It gets very difficult to when you're dealing with such huge amounts of mass that you would find, because this container, the delta between empty and full is about 30-ish tons, something like that, like 25 to 28 tons, something like that. But if you're talking about a 5 meter container, that's like 150 tons of additional mass that you're dealing with in transit. And then you have to deal with being able to lift that off and attach that to a tug and then bring that across to Kerbal, and then how to safely get that down into the atmosphere. I'm already not sure about this one getting down, let alone a container multiple times larger. All right, so we got that all filled up and ready to roll, and we are slowly lifting off and away. And you'll notice that our Delta V totals over there on the left have dropped precipitously because this thing is now full. And while I have used a little bit of my fuel, I do have a lot of extra mass from the exotic minerals, or exotic metals. All right, so we are closing in on our docking with the Nuclear Tug. Just tweak that last little bit in there and bounce off. That was totally planned. And bounce again, definitely on purpose. Click, there we go. And you will notice that we have, in our Delta V total on the left, a little bit over 6,000 meters per second. So like I said, we are able to make the journey to and from Minmus about 3 times round trip before running out of fuel on this thing. But now that I have the capacity for much bigger cargo vessels to fill in a much bigger hurry, I don't know if that's still something I'm going to be doing with this particular configuration. Alright, well in any case, I think I'm just about out of time with Space or Trucking Simulator 2017, but we will get to the return of this and the recovery of all that delicious, delicious cash next time. In the next episode, I'll probably be bringing in the final colony box for the Minmus Shipyards, and we will get to the assembly of our new station. Until then, I will see you next time.